Hello, hello. How are you guys today? Me, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Was able to work. It wasn't too bad. Slow day, so not tired today. Pretty awake. Gomez, you're tired. Yeah, and I know your job isn't easy. Sorry if I'm a little quiet, but basically this is where we're at. Last time, let's see if I can get this here. Just give it a second. All right. So let's see. When I left this last time, I had no idea what the hell I wanted to do with this thing. So it was just a mess. All right, for lack of better words. This was everything was blurry, no defined shapes, no real idea of what it is that I wanted to do. Just a general idea that I wanted something with like straight lines. That was about it. The back, obviously, I had no idea what I was doing or what I wanted to do. So that's where I had it before. And now do this here. Saving, okay. Yeah, well, I actually started to get a better idea. I just wanted to simplify and just start cleaning up the lines. I actually went into another program and started retopologizing it just so I could get some nice clean lines. But in the end, I wasn't really too satisfied with how that was coming out either. So I'm like, let me just hop back into ZBrush anyway. I don't really know. I had a better idea now what I wanted to do. And so I added these things in the back, or in the top rather. And those things just kind of hold on to the head a little bit better. So you figure this thing's gonna be kind of front heavy. It would need some kind of thing to hold on to the head a little bit better. Now granted, it's going through the cloth and all that, but I'll fix that later. I decided just make it cleaner, a little bit simpler. That's where I got with that. The back looks a little bit more cleaned up, and I'll be continuing to clean that up. Basically all I did was I took this piece here, copied it like twice, and then just put it in the back, just kind of reshaped them just a little bit and then just fused them together. I figured this was probably gonna be easier if I just made it simpler. If I do that, I could still sculpt it without having to create all the geometry for it to look a certain way. But so far I like the results a little bit better. So one of the things that I'll be doing later is that, see like this curve here, I actually want it to be straight. So it'll be from here to there. So it follows this line over here. I don't want it to be kind of curving. So I'll be doing that afterwards. Right now I just wanted to kind of get this, since I think this is coming along a little bit faster than some of the rest. I figured that the easiest way for me, since I wasn't really working off a concept and I hadn't created a sketch, was to just kind of take individual pieces and kind of start cleaning them up a little bit. And so I kind of did that over here. So I just isolated this whole section and just started working on this. And then I did the same thing for this little section over here a little bit, which I only did it to the bottom part. I still have to do it to where this little attachment thing is coming out of. Same thing with here, and also on this side. Now I was there thinking about how I don't have her necklace on here, and I'm just using a dummy head for some other purposes. But basically, her necklace has like a crow's thing, like the crow feet and the little skull. So I figured that I can kind of offset that look not only with the crown by making it more geometric and all that, and cleaner lines, but if you look at it from certain angles, it kind of has like if these things were wings, these parts that come out off to the sides, and then this kind of has a very basic similar form to the skull shape in terms of how a bird kind of has that kind of beak, and then if you notice, these parts here kind of come out. So I figured I would just do that, and it would just kind of reinforce the idea of like a bird thing. It didn't have to be too outright noticeable, but as long as there was something in that language that could in that form language that could kind of continue the idea that it was kind of a bird. So if you ever seen them when they're flying and their wings are spread out, this was kind of the idea. Granted, it's backwards because their wings would be maybe going forward if they were like in attack mode or something, but you kind of get the general idea. So I kind of like where that was going. Once I figured this little piece out, that actually was the thing that gave me the idea for how the rest of it should go. So right now I'm just kind of cleaning the edges, making it straighter, making the little cuts a little bit better. Now the reason for it is I will be going in there and retopologizing it, which is basically tracing over this so it doesn't look like this. All right, instead of having all these lines, all these little squares, I'll simplify it so I could add the textures when I paint it later. One of the things that I could actually do with this right now, no, I don't know, hopefully the stream doesn't crash, but let me see here. I'm going to open up Keyshot, and it's just a renderer. It's not really supposed to be anything final, but it gives me a general idea while I'm working on this. Like I could come up with product shots for this if I wanted to make it look like it's being displayed. Hence the reason why I had the dummy head. All right, so if we're gonna go here, I'm gonna open up this one, discard. So there's two different ways of displaying 3D sculpts and models. One way is to basically just take these large meshes and bring them into a program like this, Keyshot, and all it does is take that same mesh and doesn't do anything to it. All it does is you can come in here, add all sorts of materials, camera angles, all that stuff. So I'll go here, center fit all models, and actually let me go to the environment settings. All right, so all those little squares and stuff that you see here, those lines, those little pins, those are actually light sources, and I can rotate them around as necessary to actually go and light up the scene. I could even go as far as, no, let me save this here actually before anything. Camera environment studio. All right, so I'll just do this. I'll lock this just so I don't lose it. Then go to environment. Cool thing is that I could just go over here, drag in an environment, and you get a whole new lighting scene, which is pretty cool. Just a quick way for me, at least, to kind of see how this thing's gonna look like under different lighting conditions. Now, granted, because of the material that I have this set to, it looks very bright, and it's actually not bad looking like that. Now that I'm looking at it. But let's see here. Yeah, so if I wanted to, I could really, let's see, I could really mess around with the lighting that we have here. I could even use actual photos to get more of a natural idea of what this thing would look like. Now, granted, this is rather shiny. You can kind of see it over here. I want to give it a more matted look, almost like the way iron looks like, where it's not really shiny. I mean, iron can look very shiny, but in this case I wanted to give it that more rough and textural look, which is what I'll do at another point. And again, this is one way of rendering it. It's not real time, so that's why when I change the camera angle, it looks all kind of pixelated. And the reason for it is that it's actually taking whatever material that I've done here, and it's literally creating, taking these light sources from the image and actually shooting it at the objects. So it's actually trying to recreate, like through a type of physics, what it would look like if this material were actually there and the lighting were hitting it. I kind of actually like this with this lighting, this kind of almost golden color. Now, granted, that's being done by the reflections, though part of it is the material, which is like a kind of a weird brush metal look that I gave it here. And just to give an example of how that would work with other materials, let's say I wanted to give it this here. I think these are for another project. Yeah, I don't want that one. Let's see. Go, it's a metal. Now let's just use black. So you kind of see, maybe this one isn't the best example. Maybe we use a plastic just to kind of show what this thing could do. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, no, this program can really make anything look good. So later on, do water. Let's see, what do we have here? Liquids. Liquid is weird because you need some kind of thing to contain it. So normally, like, let's say you were gonna do water, you would model a cup, then you would model what the water would look like, which is basically just another cylinder inside the cup. And then you would get all the refraction and all that other stuff. But let's see what it looks like as tomato juice. It's one of those things that you kind of gotta mess around with. But let's see, liquid water. What's this one? So if I had modeled this thing where, like, let's say it looked like it was actually liquid instead of whatever the hell it's supposed to be right now, whatever kind of metal that is, you would get something that looks more natural. So you could just imagine if, like, let's say I modeled a cup again, as an example, and then had water coming out of it, I could actually make it look like water was coming out. Yeah, it really does. let's see here. I haven't really played around with these much. So granted, this is a liquid, but if we were using glasses or gemstones, we could actually come up with all sorts of different effects. And the way these things are set up, they're actually made to as closely resemble whatever it is that whatever material is here. And some are actual, what's the word I'm looking for? They've been like verified, I guess, through whatever way of measuring they have, whether it be refraction or whatever, to actually be with the actual liquids, because not all liquids or metals or plastics or gems reflect and refract like the same way. So I could see myself later on actually designing little bits of like jewelry here and there, where you might have like an idea for something that can be made later. Now, because of how this works, like I said, it has to actually calculate how those reflections and everything are inside. In this case, yeah, it kind of has like that glassy or diamond look. Because of the fact that it has to bounce light so many times, and then the other materials have to reflect it, it just takes a while. So on my screen, I could see like all these tiny little dots, like green, red, blue, that are all around it, because that's how light would bounce around this thing and off of it. Yeah, so like let's say it was ruby, I just come here. Oh shit, I put it on the wrong. All right, so it's kind of got that different look there. It's definitely different. And actually, if we're talking about how this water thing works, because water will flow similar to you will have all those ripples and stuff. Let's say if this was water or something like that, and it could just go in here into liquids, come back to like let's see, what do we have here? Displace, water ripples. Let's go over here. So yeah, like again, if I modeled the thing to look like water, and then I went and applied it, I could actually make it look like it's whatever the hell it is that I want it to be. Hey there, Carrie. How we doing? Hope you're having a good day. I don't know what this is here. Let's see. Yeah, so as you can see, that would be one way I quickly check out how this thing would work. So every once in a while I'll jump back onto this program and actually see how progress is going. Yeah, doing great, Carrie. Like I was telling them before, it's been a pretty quiet day, so I have enough energy to actually stream today. I don't know if this whole thing with the weird weather we're having, where it's warmer than usual, and then the time change has really screwed up my sleep. So I just decided, let me just take a whole week and I'll just relax and try to normalize my sleep. And it took a bit, but I'm there now. So yeah, that's how this thing works. And every once in a while I'll jump in here to quickly get an idea, without actually having to texture anything, how the object will look like. But at the moment, since I'm not really close to being done, I could just close that, come back over here. You know, I could always just render it from here, and it just, but the way I have it set up, all I'm really gonna get is just a couple of extra sharp lines. So since that's not necessary at the moment, I'll just leave it here. Now for me, just because of how this works, and my computer's not the fastest anymore, it's only got 4 cores, it could still push 1.3 million points without a problem. And this Dynamesh thing actually correlates to this. So what that means is that every single time I kind of do this, it will try to figure out how to get about 1,000,000 points in this case with how I have this set up. So it'll redefine all these edges, all those little squares that actually make up the thing. Once I'm usually done with this, I'll just go on mirror, weld it, and then I'll have both. Once I'm done with actually finalizing the crown, I'll go in and start adding little like scratches and dents and texture. And one thing that I've learned is that it's actually better to model all that stuff and sculpt it whenever possible, rather than just do it in texture. In another environment, they probably have like material artists that will create all that, but in this case, because it's gonna be like a portfolio piece, I'm gonna go to town on it. So even though some of these edges aren't perfect, you could just imagine if this metal were an actual old thing. It's gonna be beat up, it's gonna be rough, it's not gonna be exactly symmetrical. Maybe like a piece has got a dent in it, a large scratch. So it's okay if it's not perfect in certain areas, because just like any object in the real world, it's not gonna stay pristine for long, especially if it's a metallic object or something of that nature, because how malleable it is. So no matter how hard any metal is, it's always gonna have some kind of damage done to it. Now the density will make a difference, but it'll always get some kind of damage. So let's see. He's actually doing this here. Hey, yo, how's it going, man? Yeah, the whole sleep thing. Normally sleep, I can go on from like I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning most days, and then I'll kind of get myself ready for work and everything. So by the time I get back home, it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then by the time I actually, go to bed, it'll be like around 4 o'clock in the morning. So I only really get about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of sleep a day, and most of the time I feel pretty good. But this whole thing with the time change and this weird weather, it kind of screws me up. So I guess twice a year I'm allowed some sleep, Carrie. Yeah, with me, I normally I don't need much time to recuperate, but I tend to work out, and that kind of adds to whatever physical and mental stress I go through. And I work out like weird times. I'm usually working out like around 1 or 2. So usually when Peppa was streaming and I'm there in the background, just doing my thing, I'm watching him RP or whatever. That's usually when I'm working out. So it's I just put it on the big screen. It doesn't help that his hours are weird sometimes, so it's kind of hard to want to go to sleep when you're watching him do his thing. Yeah, there's certain days it's just like you just need that extra bit of shut-eye. I don't know, I'm getting old. I don't like it. Yeah, and it's confusing because like these days he's been very inconsistent with his usual schedule, which is stream at for long periods of time. Um, and it's usually daily. So with him not actually doing anything, it's a little bit weird. I keep thinking he's gonna just pop out of nowhere and start streaming, and it doesn't happen. Yeah, same here, man. I think like I said, it helped that I usually go to sleep late, but goddamn, it's like concentrating on what I'm doing and also watching him and being kind of addicted to that. It starts to take a bit of a toll on your mind. They really were. I'd actually be at work, and because of the stuff that I do, I'm technically the see, my day job has nothing to do with art, so I'm actually quote unquote the shipping manager at a warehouse. So because of some stuff that I have, luckily I kind of do things on my own. No one bothers me. I have a tablet that was given to me by the company, and since no one bugs me, when he was doing those 16-hour streams, I would just put on the stream and I would be watching that along while I was doing anything else. So be right back. Gotta read a bedtime story. Yeah. Yeah. Good luck with the story. But yeah, I would go just take the tablet and I would just start watching Peppo do his thing. And the day would go by pretty quick, and I'd come back home and he's still going at it. Then it's like next thing you know, it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and he still hasn't taken, all he has is taken just a slight break to maybe pay the water bill or have a snack or something. So those days were good, but that takes a toll on you. I mean, sitting down all day like that's killer. I'm usually moving around, so I think on average I'm moving close to about 10 to 13 miles in every day. So I'm used to it. So sitting down is actually very welcome for me. But with him, he's kind of just doing that all day. So that's just as tiring as anything else. I've done it from time to time. It's not easy. Yeah, he certainly is. That's some admirable shit right there. But that's why I'm actually glad that he started doing his little workouts and he's got a routine he's trying to stick to. That definitely helps a lot. I know for me, for some time, I think I mentioned it before on his stream when he's asked, I had a knee injury that really affected me for like about, I would say, easily 15 years. And it was just too much. Not being able to move and just kind of sitting down and drawing all day. It was taking more of a toll on me than just being injured by myself. So what I ended up doing was just decided I'm just gonna start working out. And luckily, however, I mean, I had doctors who had told me I would never be able to do athletics or stuff like that again. I don't know how, but I don't know if through sheer willpower and just the fact that I was just young enough. I was still in my 20s, my knee and my hip, which had also taken a toll, improved a lot. So ever since then, I've tried to keep that routine, and it's really made a difference. The next step, which has been the last few years, has been more into the nutritional side, and it certainly has made a difference. I feel like it can go for like 20, 30. At times I've gone like 70 something hours straight with no rest, and I feel totally fine. It's kind of crazy for some people to hear, but for the people that that know me close, they still can't make sense of it either, actually. But I've been lucky in that regard, I guess. Yeah, no, Isabella, it was actually pretty bad. The injury was bad enough that when it had first happened, I tore part of my ACL, MCL, PCL. My meniscus took a lot of damage, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, luckily I didn't break any bones, but the best way I can describe it was my knee bent almost 90-degree backwards. How I can still do sports and all that stuff is kind of beyond me. Yeah, it was bad. At the time I was actually playing basketball, and I remember that the thing, what was it doing? We were playing a pickup game. Now at the time, my brother and I, my stepbrother and I, we'd actually play pickup games, and from time to time we'd bet on them. So we would always be going nonstop. We'd hold the court for like hours at a time, and one of the things that when you have money on the line, I mean, you tend to press on harder than you normally would, and these are just regular street ball games. So we're holding the court, and I remember we're playing a full court game, and there's always that one guy that stays like behind at the other end of the court, doesn't really feel like running, just kind of stays there and just chilling. He's just waiting for you to go up to his end. And so this guy is underneath the basket. Now at the time, and unfortunately this is one of those things I still can't do, but I was able to do back then. I could dunk back then. So for someone who's only 5'8", 5'9", that was actually impressive, and considering that I'm a small guy in between all these tall trees, basically. And I stole the ball. I'm running down the court, and this guy, for whatever reason, decides to stay in his place. And what? I mean, it's a thing. I was into athletics a lot, so it's just the nature of it, I guess. I was lucky to be strong enough, I guess, or athletic enough. But yeah, I go for the dunk, and I was going so fast there was nothing I could do to hold on to that rim any better than I did. So when I landed, my knee hit against his, and my knee just went all the way back. Now at the moment, because of adrenaline, you're not feeling anything. All right, I'm like, so I probably played for another 15, 20 minutes. But I remember there were people who were like, yeah, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good at all. And I walked home. Luckily, it was, the court is only like 3 blocks away from where I live. So it wasn't too long of a walk. But I remember that once I sat down and, rested up, it felt uncomfortable. And when I decided to kind of look at my leg after a while, I could not see my knee. So that was a bit hard to explain to my old football coach, because he was just there like, how the hell did you injure your knee? And I'm like, I fell. Right, I felt weird. I tripped. He wasn't buying it, so that was another story. But yeah. So for like about 10 years easily, I was walking around with this busted up leg, and it kind of messed up with the way that I walk. Um, but you know, and I still feel some stuff from time to time, but it's not as bad. It's more fatigue, if anything, on occasion. Um, Once I started to like research into like things with physical therapy and actually trying it on by myself, I was actually able to will myself through it, and luckily I don't really have to deal with that anymore. So I kind of was like my own doctor in a way. It's kind of nuts now that I'm saying that out loud. Let's see here. And well, it's a story, that's for sure. Yeah, no, luckily, like around 2010 is when it really just kind of, I just started running. I didn't care how much my knee hurt. One of the things that, like the weird way that I think, I'm like, well, if it's colder, you tend to kind of get numb, right? So you're not gonna feel stuff as bad. So what I would do is, back when winter felt like actual winter, um, uh, I would go running in like 20 something, 30-degree weather. Now where I live, it's on a palisade, and it's overlooking the Hudson River, so it kind of goes up and down. It really undulates, and so I would try to run about 5 kilometers every other day. It was not a pleasant experience at first, but I'm like, you know what, this is the only way I'm gonna get better, and I just gotta power through it. And luckily, that insane way of thinking actually worked, and definitely better now. There's a ton of little stories like that. I mean, that one was more of a major one, but certainly from time to time, it's been eventful. For sure. Like I said, there's something to probably be said about just being a little bit of a lunatic and just saying, you know what, I don't care if I tore all that stuff up. I don't care if they told me I'm not going to be able to run again or do any of my athletic things. Fuck them. Just, I'll do my thing. And oddly enough, it actually worked. Yeah, I mean, I will tell you this, and this, when you're about 16 years old, and you see that they show you an X-ray, and when you're that young, you're not really thinking about the future, but there's moments where it kind of actually hits you when somebody comes and tells you, right? You're never going to be able to do anything athletic again. You'll be lucky if you'll be able to run. Like you used to, and athletics for you is pretty much over. And when he showed me that X-ray, I don't know if you ever seen like when bamboo kind of like splits, it doesn't really break. It kind of looks like there's fibers everywhere. That's kind of how part of my X-ray looked, where the tendons and all that were messed up with the cartilage and all that. It's like if there's ever been one time that I've actually been afraid of anything, it was at that moment. But I don't know. Luckily, like I said before, this weird way of rationalizing it and actually saying, hey, you know what the hell with that, I'm just gonna do my thing. It took me a while. I probably should have done it earlier, but it actually worked, which was weird. So now my whole way of thinking about what physical therapy and what people can do, I'm like, ah, I did it, you should be able to do it too. Which, when you've met enough people, you realize that's actually not the case, and it's very frustrating at times. That was my second origin story, Isabella. There's like 2 or 3. That was the I guess you could say the second one, maybe, I don't know, second or third one. The first one was the one that I kind of said on Peppo's chat the other day, which was the thing with the school and basically being kidnapped in the middle of the day to take a test, and then a week later being in the school for and I quote, this is not me flexing, Carrie, the name was Thomas Jefferson School for the Gifted and Talented. Future past story. I mean, there is a joke, a running joke for a while, that says that at some point I might actually figure out time travel. So you might be onto something. Nice. See, that's the thing. Now I don't know in your case, Carrie, but with me, they literally, I guess in first grade, they no, you too, Isabella. That's awesome. See, it's like there's a commonality. I was in first grade, and I remember I would just question stuff. Nah, they didn't make a mistake with you. Everybody keeps saying that you're a smart dude, so I'm gonna say that's a highly suspicious statement there. Damn, Isabella, that's mean. But I don't remember what I was talking about. The teacher thought that was actually a pretty bright kid. Now I don't know what her formal connections were. Sometimes I felt like I was being Truman Showed after that, because I would go to see her on various times in my life in different places, in scholarly situations. But basically, as a first grader, I guess this teacher saw that I had potential and she had connections, and she told a friend of hers that worked at that school to see if they could maybe give me a test and see where I was at, and see if it was actually a thing where it was plausible to have me go to that school. They gave me the shot, and like I said, I was literally in class, and in the middle of the day, 2 people came in that were part of their testing, recruiting people, and they just said, hey, you're coming with us, you're gonna take a test, and depending on how you do, you're either gonna be in the school or not. When you're like, I don't know, six years old, that's kind of weird, especially when you're like, your parents aren't involved. Now back then there were no cell phones, at least not the way they are now, so it's not like I could just call up and find out. And my mom used to work at a factory, basically a sweatshop, to be honest. But so there was no way of getting in communication with her and getting in touch with her. So they put me on this car, and then took me to a school that was probably about a mile and a half away, something like that. And once I got there, they put me in this little room. I'm all by myself. There's one seat, and they say, well, you're taking this test, and this is a little weird. Don't be scared. And when someone tells you don't be scared, that's the first thing you do, especially when you're a child, right? And in a situation like that. They're like, you can take all the time that you want, just take the test, and just know that it's okay if you don't do well. Now, from my understanding, no one had ever passed that exam 100%. Apparently I did, and I did it in record time. Now, one of the things about me, unfortunately, that I still suffer with to this day is that I do, like Carrie says, these subtle flexes, right? So even as a kid, I already had that inside of me. And I finished the test, and they were like, don't you want to check your work? I was like, nah, that's, I think I'm okay. I don't even know what this is for anyway, right? So when you're like 6 years old and you're answering them like to them like that, they're, you know, kind of looking at you like, all right, this kid's like, thinks a little too highly of himself. And sure enough, like about 20 minutes later, after being in the room again by myself, they they give me the results, and they were like, hey, look, this never happens, but you only had one answer wrong, right? Like, it's impressive, so we can't waste time with you. Next week you're coming to school, we're gonna give you your parents the paperwork. And all I remember is I got paperwork to give to my mom. My mom had no idea what the hell was going on. She was just there like, what is this? What are you asking me to sign? And I told her as best as I could, and she was just like, oh, they're putting you in a private school basically, and I don't have to pay? Are you sure I don't have to pay? Because we don't got money like that. I was like, yeah, I don't think so. No payment needed. And then she signed it. Was he bald and in a wheelchair? No, they were just bald. But yeah, it was pretty cool. If anything, the standards there were incredibly tough. And I always think about it because Peppo's always talking about what it really is to be smart or book smart, as opposed to having like actual, you know, like raw intelligence where you could look at things and disseminate the information in a way where you can actually come up with conclusions without having to look in a book, where you can just kind of solve stuff on your own. So the way that they taught us there had nothing to do with let's look at a book, let's have open quizzes. I mean, we did a lot of reading, but the standards were very strict. So one of the things that they did was that they had a rule. The rule was, if you get anything lower than an A, you were put on probation. So if you had an A minus and you had an A minus for 2 periods in a row, they would seriously consider letting you go. And yeah, it was incredibly tough, and it was probably the only time in my life that I've actually really been challenged on a mental level. And it's sad that that was only in the younger years of my life and not like later on, where that probably would have made an even greater difference. But it taught me how bad the education is from like or what is considered good schooling and what bad schooling is. It was definitely an eye-opener, because all the kids there, the way they did it was they were about 20, I think. Yeah, it was 20 students per each class. There was only one class for each grade, so it was 1 through 8, and then they had another program where once you went from like 9 onward, it was like this whole other thing that they had. And they had teachers from, or instructors from around the world that would show up to teach us things about math, philosophy, science, things like that. We also had no summer break. It was kind of constant. We'd have maybe a week or two here. Do you want to research on something? Time. Yeah. Now, one of the things you bring up a very good point, Carrie, because it was during that time that it didn't occur to me right away. Now, I know there's all different types of groups that do these studies and do all this type of research. And one of the things that I noticed eventually, like I said, the lady who was actually able to get me into that school, she, like, I would meet her later on in life, like maybe 3 or 4 more times, on in a way that it almost seems a little suspicious, right? It felt weird. But this is where we're going to Peppo conspiracy theory hour. But they were Freemasons. Almost all the teachers were Freemasons, which I found kind of interesting. I found that out later on when I was looking at the yearbooks. I was like, wait a second, they all have the same ring, right? And then I remember in the parking lot, their license plates usually have that stuff. So they definitely had, obviously, certain connections and certain things within that group. But basically, they had 20 students for each classroom, and you could sit anywhere that you wanted. They didn't really put a focus on that, but they drilled your mind in a way I don't think I've ever, even as an adult, been drilled with that type of mental strain. They would tell you, they would put up some problem or something and no real explanation as to the how, the why, the where, anything. No explanation. You just have to kind of figure it out. And the way they yes, oh my God. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that they had like a whole network of stuff like that to just kind of run little experiments on kids. But it was definitely a very different type of school. I mean, they taught us as best as they could all different types of stuff for I remember as a third grader we were learning philosophy. My major thing, my expertise turned out to be physics, right? So as a third grader, I'm there bringing up stuff with physics, and I could talk to you about all the stuff that is related to that in a way where I don't even know how to explain it, but they try to make it natural in terms of, yeah, you'd have the books, yeah, you would study, yeah, you would have to do homework. But one of the things that they did is that there was nothing about memorization. There were no open book quizzes. There was nothing like that. They would just kind of randomly pick you up from the crowd at random times and just start like having discussions with you, and they'd kind of make you really think about why it was that you had a specific answer. So their idea was, back in the day, like ancient times, when people figured out things like the circumference of the earth, or that the stars were not rotating around the earth and it was the other way around, is that they had to come to certain conclusions before they can get to that point. So they were trying to teach us to get to that point, to look at the world in that way. And it seemed to have worked with most of the students. It was very interesting. It was a very interesting time, and unfortunately I wasn't able to stay in that school because we moved out of the district, but they made exceptions so that later I would go and take programs in college. So you could just imagine the area where I live at here in New Jersey. On the weekends I would go to college, and this was me as like as a 7th grader, 8th grader. You see like a group of kids that are in their like 13 to 16 in the middle of all these college students, and they would just kind of look at us weird. And the sad part is that we were all smarter than them. It was a very interesting time for sure. but I actually enjoyed it. Now, when I actually got into like regular public school, that was actually the thing that, like to go back to the point that I said before, is when I really noticed the difference between what actual intelligence is and just someone that was book smart. Because, yeah, same here. There was just something about it. One, there's an innocence to it. Because you're not having to worry about anything else. You can just kind of focus on all those other things that they kind of throw at you. But yeah, I mean, I certainly felt going to public school that yeah, that wasn't intelligence. What they were praising as smart wasn't really smart. And since I was such a dick at the time, I was the type of kid that I would let all the goody kids answer the questions, get it wrong, and without ever having to pick up a pencil or paper, especially in like a math class. I remember I'd be in trigonometry or sometimes in the pre-calculus class. I would just kind of be looking out the window, and I would just turn to the teacher and be like, "I got the answer." And but because she was also, I remember the teacher that specifically one that I had, she would be like, "Oh, what? You got to go to the bathroom?" I'm like, "No, I got the answer." And she was like, "Oh yeah, what is it?" And then I would give her the answer, and then she would just get this look on her face like, "God damn it, he did it to me again." Then she would say, "Go up to the board and show the work." And I'm like, "I can't." It goes, "Why?" It's in my head. I never actually took out any paper or anything to do it. The only reason why I would answer any of the questions was to embarrass her favorite students, because I was a jerk at the time. And that was kind of like a sport for me. It's like, you think you're smart? You're not that smart. Yeah. That's actually, believe it or not, Isabella, that's actually where it came about. That's the first time that anybody mentioned that. I had a couple of friends that were just like, yo, you just go into like this different mode now. At that time, it was kind of the beginnings of like Dragon Ball and all that. And one of the things that they have is when like Goku turns into his like ape form, is like the Ozaru mode, right? And because it sounds almost like my last name, that's where they came from. It's like, oh, he's just taking it out on them and they got no chance. And that's the origin of that. So that's where that comes from. But yeah, that was a sport for me. Embarrassing the smart kids. And I had no real reason to. Most of these kids were like nice. They were just a little too full of themselves, and I felt I had to put them in their place. I don't know why I felt I had to be the one to do it, but I just knew I had to at the time. Like, I think back and I'm like, would I do anything differently when it came to that? It's like, probably not. It probably still had it coming. Yeah, so Carrie, I don't know if you know Carl Jung. Pretty sure you do. Smart. You're a smart cookie. And so you could just imagine a little 10-year-old Osorio with that book, like a couple of his books at like lunchtime, reading that. Was a total nerd. I remember when I left the school, one of the things that they actually gifted me was 3 physics books and like a philosophy book and like I forgot what the other one was. And that was like the best time. I just remember being like, yes, I got books. I look at kids now that there's that fire for that type of learning is, it's not there. They'd rather be on their phones, TikToking. I can't help it but be a little bit saddened by that. Oh man, it was especially when you're young and they teach you stuff like that. Oh, I think it definitely changes your perspective on just for, you know, even forgetting about like the humanitarian level of it, sometimes thinking about definitely outside yourself and realizing that like like one of the favorite things that I always like quoting is that the only thing I know is that I know nothing. And you know, like everybody now feels like they have an answer to something, and I feel like it's a false idea for the most part. We have ideas of stuff, but we never really truly know everything. And I think kids today, or just anybody today, if they were shown that type of stuff at an early enough age, man, I think we'd be in a different place. Too much about the me and not the we. Like, you know, to some degree. I mean, to a degree. In nature, we got to be like kind of like greedy, right? It's our way to survive. But as you learn philosophy and all that stuff, especially as a young kid, you kind of see that you can still be greedy, and yet at the same time, you know, maybe give up something or have some leniency in certain aspects for the greater good, which in turn helps you later on. And I just don't feel there's enough of that. Right now, people are just talking at each other. How was your experience? Oh, with that and Carrie too. Curious to see another point of view. Remember asking my dad riding in the car some pre-K 4 or 5 years old. We've never seen the same colors. So this is green, red, blue. We can't see through each other's eyes, but how can we know? It was like, what the fuck? But I was waiting for some philosophy. Man, that's true, man. Ah, yeah, that whole thing really just it bugs me, man. I see kids now; they're praised for that. Just, it's not it's not intelligence; it's just memorization, which is an incredible skill to have, but it's not the end all and be all. It shouldn't be the standard by which we measure um, our actual intelligence. Yeah, man. I certainly, from everything that I hear, I haven't been able. I think I only caught part of a stream once while I was at work, and I definitely see that even in your comments sometimes in the Peppo's chat. You definitely have a philosopher's soul. I think the thing is that aside from all that, I think what yeah, you can be good at memorization. Yeah, you can actually have like raw intelligence, but the one thing that we just kind of don't focus on, I think in general, when it comes to education, I've noticed is that there's no real emphasis on how you apply any of that stuff. Like, yeah, I could know physics, I can know trigonometry, I can know that stuff when I'm like 8 years old. But what use will it be? Like, how do I use that? How do I uh take that and actually do something useful with it? And I think that part overall isn't taught, which we should be. Yeah, man, for sure. Nobody teaches you how to think. It's very true. Very, very true. One of the things that I see now, and because I'm still a dick to the smarter kids, right? Or when they think that they're smart, I'll still kind of go and like challenge them. So, for example, I have a cousin. She actually went to a gifted and talented school. But if you teach everyone how to think, then you can't control the message they receive. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's kind of like the point that I was going to say about my cousin. She went to like a gifted and talented school. She went to like some prestigious whole thing afterwards, and even a college and everything. And one of the things about it is that she's very, very good at picking up stuff, and I think she's into like forensics now and all that. But there's always something missing. I feel like there's just like a piece. It's just like a tiny little piece. I mean, not everyone receives the same information the same way, so that's kind of a hard thing too. I mean, I think that's why they tested us the weird way that they did, at least to go into that school, because there were definitely kids that were smart, and they were like, no way, you are not coming in here, not within 30 feet. We'll be waiting. I remember one of the things that they told us is to when we first got there, is to think about for example, the whole thing about how you figure out the circumference of the earth. And I remember for like a few days, one of the things that they kept doing is just kind of moving like these sticks around and just not really explaining why, just kind of like moving them. Just their whole thing was always pay attention, pay attention, pay attention to every little detail of everything you see, and always question whatever it is, as minor or as major as it might seem, and then just dwell on it. Think about every little point. So at some point, somebody was, because of the way that things had been set up, figured out, or at least started coming around to the conclusion that the sticks or the poles that they were using were for some kind of measurement, even though they weren't for it. Nobody had said anything, no one had marked anything. They were just like, just observe, just observe. And it's a very odd way of teaching, or at least trying to get you to be more observant and question. But I mean, it seemed to work at that school. They had us doing all sorts of things. They wanted us to start acting. So just imagine little me. Now, one of the things about my face is not really changed. It's more or less the same, which is like everyone's face kind of changes throughout the years. Mine looks almost the same. It's just the fuzz that I have. So they had us acting, and it was like they had us do plays at a theater, just kind of nuts. Now, Carrie, I know you wouldn't have been able to contain yourself, but my first appearance on stage, I had to kind of run. And when I run over there, and I was like some kind of like professor or doctor, all right, and I was trying to say something to it was a Native American in the play. As I'm running, I trip on a cord because somebody didn't put enough gaffer tape on the floor, and I took a tumble. I did like this as I tumbled. I remember I was so nervous, and I kind of had to play that off. It's a good thing that you can't really see the crowd, but man, that was embarrassing. And they were like, "Well, life is like that. Sometimes you're gonna have moments that work perfectly. You might have rehearsed it, a million times. When it comes down to it, you're gonna be screwed. Something's gonna happen you didn't think about, so you have to think about things you didn't think about. And I'm like, what the hell? How do you think about something you haven't thought about? I think if anything, they were making us paranoid. It's like 12 steps ahead of everybody else. The only way that they were able to achieve that is by instilling the fear of God in us. I don't know. It was a very interesting time. I enjoyed it. I definitely miss it. Almost every day was a field trip. Gosh. I think that's why I'm kind of like for a while, if I'm being honest, there was especially after my injury with my leg, you know, it kind of makes you think about stuff. You think you're invulnerable, you think you can kind of do anything, and when you got no choice but to just kind of sit around, just kind of wait things out, you know, it can put a lot of stuff into perspective now. Luckily, because of how, one, I was raised, and two, how I was taught, I started really starting to channel my stuff, because for a while I didn't do art. I didn't really care about it anymore. I always painted as a kid, but I didn't really think about it, other than like a passing fancy. And I remember coming out of high school, I went to an art school, not the greatest, but I learned some stuff there. And as what happens to most young people, you don't really give a damn about anything. There's no discipline, and a little wild or reckless when it came to certain things. I wasn't really a wild kid, but I was definitely always up for stuff. And one of the things that once I graduated from there, I had nothing to show for it, really. And luckily, and I think I mentioned this in Pepple Stream once, I still technically am. We're all in this art group that started publishing books and doing all sorts of art. And the idea was basically, look, we all got skills. We've all learned something. Why the hell don't we just get better at it? It definitely, that attitude worked into feeding into my nature of learning stuff. I had never done, you know, lots of digital art the way some of these guys were doing it. And some of them were into 3D. And 3D in 2005 was not the same as what it is now. It's not this. So we all kind of, how do I explain this? The way, for example, in Pepple's community, everything is very very encouraging in an almost soft way, and it's good. I think there should be that type of attitude. It's definitely helpful when there's like a community. Now, we had the ideology of you're never gonna really learn everything if you're being coddled, right? And so we started doing a lot of critiques, and the website actually was kind of big for a while, back when forums were a thing. And we actually met a lot of great artists that way. And one of the things that we would do is that we were like, hey, look, you post your art, just know you're gonna get it ripped. Like, and not in a bad way. We weren't trying to be mean. It's like we just weren't gonna hold back and tell you it looked great when there were like technical errors. You wanted to get into typography, Carrie, if you were there, you would have loved it. People knew about like Joseph Mueller Brockman. They'd have all like the stuff with the Swiss designers back in the day. They'd have stuff that what's his name, Braun would work on. There was just so much stuff. Everybody had a thing. We could attack any problem, um, any visual thing, uh, through any of our individual skill sets, and it was pretty awesome. Um, but one of the cool things about it is that we all encourage each other to learn something from. Yeah, I love that stuff. I remember when oh, what was the name of this? There was a website. What was there was this guy Coulson, something like that. I can't remember his name now. I'm terrible with names. Um, I had a few concussions, which for whatever reason affected my ability to remember names. I can remember everything else, events, stories, but I'm terrible with names. But this guy recommended uh, the a book by Joseph Mueller Brockman, and after that, I was like, holy shit, that's something as simple as a grid, right? Which fed into a whole mess of stuff. So I got Photoshop. I ended up getting Illustrator and just making all sorts of stuff. And so I ended up with like all this typography and graphic design stuff, just cool. And then because of how, again, back to how we were taught, it's like, you know, one thing feeds into another, and that's how it led into doing 3D and some of the other stuff, because I was doing concept art, because one of the guys got hired at a company called Sideshow Collectibles. Now they do these figures, these maquettes that are incredibly detailed. I actually was able to go out to California and see the stuff. Yes, it is solving a big puzzle, and you could do it. It's like for everything, whether it's architecture, whether it's something as simple as well, I wouldn't say simple, but it's something like a newspaper. Anything visual is graphic design, right? And it's all a puzzle. And understanding how people even look at stuff, like how their eyes move, right? So like people in the West look at stuff a certain way because they read a certain way. So it's like a Z shape, right? And then the other ones look at it another way because they write the other way. Man, it's a rabbit hole. It's crazy. Just a second here. All right, I'm back. Yeah, so it's like yeah, it's a rabbit hole, man. It's I ended up getting so many books. I ended up going to like so many like little seminars. One of the things that I was never able to do, unfortunately, was Carrie, you know, the 99%, right? That stuff where they would do like these talks on stuff on design in New York sometimes. I think the whole stuff was now owned by like Adobe. So I don't know how everything went after that, but I always felt so bad that I never got a chance to go to one of those things and just meet a whole mess of designers and shit, and just bounce ideas, or just hear what other people were doing, see what they were doing. But yeah, it goes from like that to like typography to, I remember it was like architecture, because if you look at architecture, even some of these people are doing stuff with like organics, depending on the stuff that they're doing, they're essentially using the grids. And then I started thinking of making that correlation of like, wait, you know, they use grids in typography, they're using grids in architecture, they're doing this and that, so on and so forth. That stuff just fascinates the hell out of me. Yes, it's like Adobe Max, that's right. But and that stuff is fun. I remember I remember I showed, well, actually, in one of the streams, I showed Isabel, like the site that I had done for the group at the time. So I was just fascinated with things, but no one could really code. So at the time, I learned whatever code was through like PHP and all the stuff that they were doing with uh, XHTML that like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when they started using like CSS and all that more prominently instead of tables. I learned all that just because I wanted to put the design up there, and that was pretty awesome. That was another rabbit hole I went down, just so that I could show the art I learned to code. Although most of it, since I haven't done it in a while, it's kind of faded a bit. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be hard, since I know there's certain things have made it easier now than it used to be. Yeah, I'm sure, especially if you have like a, with the stuff that you have with typography and design and stuff, it makes sense. It makes sense. I think that's pretty cool. And all that stuff is connected. It's like I just wish there was a better way that they could figure out, oh, okay, this is what you're good at. This is what something that might actually interest you. Like if they could figure that out, man, that'd be awesome. Yeah, in high school, I'm not you say that, even though that's a joke. I remember I used to have they were gonna put in the yearbook, most likely to start a revolution. It's like, why? And they're like, dude, dangerous man if you speak to certain people. Yeah, no, I kind of, through the limited interaction that I've had with you on chat or whatever, just seeing your commentary, I could see that. Oh, I certainly can see that. And from what everybody else has said too, I kind of gathered. Um, I never did. Did I do remember they gave us that? Nah, nah, I don't remember ever taking something like that. I'm pretty sure they did. I just can't remember at the moment. I don't know. At the time, I don't think I really thought about that stuff. All I was like, let's see, like should I getting answers things as a little bit. It's like, might as well have as much fun as possible. Yeah, you know what? You're not. I'm in that same boat. I know I upset my parents a lot with that. Personally, they were like, "Look, you did all this. You have this capability of doing that. Why the hell aren't you using it?" I'm like, "What the hell am I gonna use it for? I don't even know what the hell to do." It's like, apparently I can do almost everything, and everything interests me, but I don't seem to fit anywhere. Military think tank. I mean, it somehow makes sense. That makes sense. You're always on top of the ball when it comes to things. You know what Peppo's gonna ask for before he says it, just because, come on, certain things are kind of predictable. So those are good. Yeah, I hear that, man. Before I go back to work, I think later on. Yeah, although I think that kind of adds to your ability to think later on. I mean, without those experiences, you wouldn't have something else to draw on. All right. It's like, I think it also gives you a sense of urgency in a way when you realize, holy shit, I've missed out on a lot of stuff, or I've wasted my life just basically bullshitting, you know? And at some point, I think those experiences, as much as they suck sometimes, that they're necessary. You don't get to that point without those, you know? I mean, there's some shit that, man, I'd rather not think about or ever go through, but it's leading me to wherever the hell I'm going at right now. Yeah, it's all patterns. Yeah, and Carrie's definitely efficient. I wish I had that type of discipline and efficiency earlier on, and I would have it for certain things, but not everything. I've slowly had to kind of like reason myself. And like I said, you know, I'm 36 now. That's not old, but like about 3 or 4 years ago, it just suddenly hit me. I'm like, fuck, man, I'm going nowhere, and I'm going nowhere fast. I gotta do something. I gotta develop my skills. I've done freelance, but there's some stuff that maybe through anxiety or whatever, I didn't take the certain chances uh, where I should have, and I was in a weird place because of it. But slowly digging myself out of it. And like I said, 36 is not old, but it certainly isn't the youngest either. So that sense of urgency that you get, that fuel is definitely useful though too. Definitely. It's like you can see it. I think I was there thinking about it because I don't know. Whenever I see anything, I try to reason stuff out, and I look at Peppo, for example, and that's actually the reason why I kind of put a focus back into art the way I hadn't in a while, because I was almost ready to give up on it. Um, and I just saw how much he was pushing himself, and especially now with learning new methods. Like, fuck, man. I always said there's always somebody like working while I'm asleep. Like, what the hell happened to me? Uh, I don't know. It just revitalized something in me, seeing his enthusiasm. So I'm glad of that. And I met some of you guys. You guys are pretty cool. And I draw from what I see all of you do. Carrie and her efficiency. Isabella remembering everybody's name. Being very empathetic. There's proof of it right there in chat right now. But yeah, I've been trying to apply all that stuff. Little things that I see you guys do. I think about it and then try to apply it to whatever I'm doing. Especially with all this stuff that's going on, this weird ass year that we're having. We got nothing but time, really. Very minimal distractions. So, might as well refocus, reset. I know, I think you briefly mentioned Carrie, like how you're a mod on other people's streams and all that, and I saw it on Derek's thing too recently. I wasn't even aware of that. I'm like, damn, what? Gotta be responsible. I need to do something. And so like seeing all these little things is actually part of the reason why I decided to stream. It just kind of keeps me accountable. Get that positive feedback loop. Yeah, I'm, you know, Isabella, you know, I'm glad I met all of you people. You guys are all interesting and fascinating and talented, and whatever led us here, I'm glad it did. Hey, Bill, how's it going, man? Everyone's showing up today. Yeah. See, Carrie, with my thing, it was like just thinking all the time and never really any action. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of reasons for that, but I've slowly been digging myself out of that hole. Oh man, yeah, exciting stuff, Bill. Bill, very exciting stuff. I'm sure Bill has a story, based on what I've seen on the streams, about something that happened while he was washing dishes. Someone maybe with a family member, maybe something where something exciting happened. You're a bit of a wild person too, Bill. So I'm pretty sure one of those dishes didn't make it out of the kitchen, as you probably cracked it over somebody's head. Ugh. Yeah, so I think I mentioned it before with this thing here where it says Dynamesh. Now, when I go over here, you can kind of see it does this weird distortion thing. That's because the geometry there is all screwed up. Not today. So I have to go back, smooth it out. Just kind of do this, and when you do that, it'll actually do that Dynamesh thing. But it does its best to reform the geometry to conform to is whatever the surface is doing. So I'll do that every once in a while once it starts to get a little too out of hand. And like you see, compared to where it was in the beginning, let's see. Do the rewind function. Yeah, I definitely gotta update this computer. It was powerful at the time, but it no longer has that oomph it used to. For about 10 years, yeah, it struggles at times. But yeah, this is where it was at before I started. It was nothing really defined, just a few areas here and there. And then, sorry, fast forward it again. You see it. A lot of those lumps are kind of now gone. It's starting to take some kind of form. So what I'll do really quickly is I'm gonna go back to that program that I opened up earlier to kind of get a quick read of how it's coming out, because like I said before, there's a couple ways of attacking how this stuff is rendered, and one of the things that I like to do now is actually take this and make it game ready. What that basically means is that all this nonsense that you see here, right, all these little squares and all this stuff, that actually there's a new mesh that gets made over this that's low poly. So kind of like with the old PlayStation games, like the PlayStation 2, PlayStation is like less polygon. So every single one of those little squares that you saw there was a polygon. But you can't put that in the game. And for me, it's more about not even so much about putting this in a game. It's more about getting it to render in real time, where I could just move it around like this, and it'll still move this quickly, if not quicker, along with whatever material I've decided to texture it with. So what I'll do here is just mirror and weld. And like I said, this computer, it's not the most powerful, and luckily this program is built to be very efficient. So even though it's pushing upwards of 2 million points, it still moves relatively fast, which is very good. And I remember the days where simple box modeling would make my computer like almost crash. Makes me feel like an old man. All right, so let's take this. Save this. Haven't saved in a while. Luckily, this program I have it set up so that if there's inactivity, or every couple of if there's inactivity, it'll save after about a minute. But every 15 minutes or so, it will actually autosave. So go over here. It's gonna open up the other program. Right, so we're gonna go here, and right now I just pushed it all here, but since I don't have the lighting set up, I'm just going to open up the other scene I had previously made where I was messing around with the lights and all that, and I'll re-import it just so that I can get the new geometry. So when it first initially loads up, it takes a while, but then after that it goes a little bit quicker. So back here, and I think earlier we did this one when that was coming up with some interesting, yeah. Let's see. We'll go here. Let's take the depth of field off. Granted, it's kind of floating there, but that's not the point. It's more to see how it's reading. Are the forms coming out a little bit better? Oh my goodness, yeah, man. Those old versions, I mean, they weren't quick at saving either, which didn't help. So if you were saving it, I think one of the worst things was when it would save, and in my building, one of the things that I've had an issue with a lot in the past was that the power always used to go out. So I'd be in the middle of something, and just as I'm saving, of course, at that moment is when it would crash, and then I would lose all that work. And at the time, I wasn't really that great at, you know, saving versions and all that. It would just be the same file. So then I would lose it. And then I would remember, these were in the early days of my freelance. Yeah, no, it was terrible, man. I was like, now sometimes I'll just save like every 15 seconds. It's just like my fingers on the finger. So I remember I would, the best example of it is I had to do a design for a maquette, and I lost the file did get corrupted. Luckily, it wasn't. I had another version of it. It was the first time I started doing it, and I think I lost about 3 days work. And luckily, I was like, you know what? I'm just screw it. It's a good thing it's the weekend, And I took another 3 days and I was able to do everything actually quicker since I now knew exactly what I needed to do. But man, I'd never want to go through that shit again. So I went and bought myself a backup power supply that's always connected to this. And then at the same time, you know, just get used to saving. Yeah, Photoshop was the worst, man. Just save that every time. Yeah, no, that PTSD definitely developed. And one of the cool things that I had, I actually got myself, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a loop deck. It's fucking pricey as hell, but for what it's doing, for me at the moment, whether it be for Photoshop if I'm in it, or sometimes Illustrator, and definitely with ZBrush, is that, because of the fact that I have a Wacom tablet, like the Cintiq, so I'm drawing on the screen, kind of like the way you would on an iPad or something. You don't always have the functions right at your fingertips. I mean, even though I have the buttons here to do it, this thing, I just press one button, my finger's on that button, and every like couple minutes I just press it. So it looks like a Stream Deck, if you've ever seen what those look like. It's definitely more expensive for sure, but the cool thing about it is that I have it set up now where no matter the program that I go into, it immediately changes its function, so I could just go and press the same button to save no matter what program I'm in. Yeah, no, once you get it, once you do it the first time, like usually when you're working on stuff like that and you lose it, you realize that the first time that you're working on it is more to like, is the problem solving part of it. And then the second time, you already know what, you already solved those issues. It's just a matter of now being able to go back and redo it. And usually you're able to do it faster. I mean, it's not guaranteed, because sometimes then you realize, oh wait, you know what, now that I'm here, I might do something. And sometimes it takes more, you have to have that discipline to just kind of like, all right, let me just stick to the plan. But yeah, nah, I bought myself all that stuff. I needed to. I had certain bad habits and I had to get myself out of them. And it's not so easy at first. Oh yeah, yeah, no, the I had, when I had to do that, I had to do an anniversary poster for the Friday the 13th, and they gave me a sketch, and it was a bad sketch. Like, the guy's a great artist, he's like really well known, does some awesome stuff, but for whatever reason he phoned it in, and the way it was scanned was terrible. And so I remember I worked on the thing for like about a week, and I was kind of happy where it was going, and just because of the foundation, what he had given me was not that great. So then I kept getting all this feedback, and I had to keep on changing stuff, right? And it was already frustrating as it is. And then something happened. My hard drive failed, and I lost everything. I lost my brushes. I lost Photoshop. I had nothing, and I had to find out how to recuperate all that stuff. And I learned a lot of things along the way. But man, that was not fun. I certainly was having a panic attack when that happened. Like, the hard drive was dead. It was dead. It would just click. So it was like you would turn it on, you would just hear the, and when that happened, man, I just felt like my heart drop, and I certainly felt my eyes starting to get watery, and I'm like, man, this stuff I need to have this in. The hell am I gonna do? The panic that ensued certainly it was certainly something. But luckily everything like went well. If anything, I learned that I could really work under pressure, but I don't really want to have to deal with that on a consistent basis. Yeah, it's certainly a feeling, all right. It's certainly a feeling. Yeah, so like I was mentioning before with this thing, it's not real time. I can move this thing and you'll see it kind of slowly, progressively render, but uh, there's just too many polygons. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I unfollowed myself at that time. I think my brain checked out that day. Hey, look, at the end of the day, I met the deadline, Bill, so I don't know. I mean, I was a baby, but a baby that figured it out. Let's see. Actually, if anything, let's see here. I'll show you the example of the real-time stuff that I'm talking about. What a difference um, it makes. So I'll show you guys this. This was the pumpkin that I posted earlier. All right, so when you look at this, it looks like it has massive amounts of detail. All right, but in reality, it has none of that. Yeah, saving in 3 places. Yeah, I remember somebody told me that, and at first it didn't really occur to me as to like what they meant. Like instinctively, I knew what they meant, but he was like, unless you backed it up in 5 places, it's not really backed up. And I'm like, yo, this guy's a nut job. What the hell's he talking about? It can't be that bad. 5 places, this lunatic. All right, but then yeah, once I had all these things happen to me, then you know, it was definitely something that came to mind where I'm like, yeah, he's right. There's a point where you kind of have to grow up and realize that, yeah, you got to save like every 15 minutes, have it in 3 places at minimum, and maybe, just maybe, then you can consider it actually backed up. If you haven't done those things, then you haven't really backed up your work, and it might as well not exist. All right, so my point about the real-time rendering, as you can see, there's no progressive like loading. It's like immediate. So if I wanted to, I can actually throw this on like Unreal Engine or another game engine. If you notice these little squares, that's topology I would. Now if I wanted to actually put this in a game, and depending on the size and what you're going to be seeing, I probably wouldn't be putting all this detail here. I could actually I really just wanted to make something really high end. Thanks, Bill. um what you do is there's this thing called a normal map. Now if I zoom in, all these little nooks and these little crevices and stuff, they're not really there, right? So if I do this, that's actually what's there, right? It's pretty much a smooth surface. So you end up having to paint, in a way, uh this thing that's called a normal map. And what it does, it instructs the renderer to how the light will bounce off these theoretical points that aren't really there. So like if you notice here, right, you'll see all these little bumps and these little pits. They don't exist, right? And most of that stuff is actually just painted dark. So if I actually go here and do the albedo and I change this to like a gray, something like that, it'll be easier to see. That's actually how it looks like. It's actually very smooth. There's no real shape or form. It's all meant to like fool you. So like all video games are like this too, for the most part. The shadows and everything, they're just painted in. Same thing here. And so it's like there's these little, it's the same image, but there's like different aspects of the image. There's one that tells you how light scatters on the surface. There's another one that tells you if it's shiny, what's specular. Like I said, this one gives you like the bumps and stuff. Translucency. Its ability to reflect light and all that. occlusion, so like more shadows. And then there's this thing called the cavity map. So if it's very subtle, and I'll be doing that to the crown and then the lady that I'm actually working on right now, all this stuff. See, it fools your eye into thinking that there's more detail than there really is. All these are just like images. They're just images layered on top of each other. So if I were to turn them all off, let's see, I go here, let's go, let's see, turntable, nope, that's not it. Yeah, I'll just go like this. Yeah, that's basically it. A bump map is basically telling you, it's telling the renderer that the light is going to kind of curve in a certain way, or how it's gonna bounce off to make it look like there's like the little bumps and the little cavities and all that. And a displacement map, what it'll do is that it's actually giving instructions so that these points here actually move. So while one affects it's just an image that affects the renderer in terms of like you would never see a bump map change the surface of these normals, right? But a displacement map will give the instruction to this surface to actually move a little bit. So wherever in the map there's a pit, the polygons will actually push down, like the points will push down. Wherever there's a bump, they'll kind of pop up. So that will actually change the surface a bit. It's not by a lot, but it will do it. Depending on how bad or how strong the effect is that you want to go for. I was a little bit unaware at first because some of the stuff almost seems the same. For example, there's roughness, there's gloss, right? And you would think, well, really, what's the difference between like the roughness and the gloss? It's kind of the same thing, just opposite ends of the spectrum, and it is. But then it's just really just like workflow stuff. But yeah, eventually that's what I'll be doing to the crown to when I texture it, because you got to do what are called UVs. So there's like seams in this. There's seams everywhere. There's seams in the stem. There's seams on the surface of like the pumpkin head. Same thing with the eyes, the teeth, the gums, the tongue, the bottom over here. There's seams in the surface, and those seams correspond to the images that are here. So for example, let's see if I go here and I open it. I think if let's see, textures, no, which was that one? Color. So I preview it, you'll see what I'm talking about. And all this stuff is actually pretty easy to learn. I mean, all this stuff that I'm doing here, I just did it by watching Isabella. I showed you the guy, Nimlot, Georgian. You know, just looking at his streams while I was working, and I would see what he was doing while I was painting or actual work, and just by watching him, I was able to actually pick up on everything that he was doing. So yeah, this is actually how the pumpkin really looks like. Now in this case, I used the 4K texture. In the real case scenario, you probably wouldn't be doing that. But again, these are portfolio pieces, so it doesn't really matter. So this is what the surface is. This is like the gums right here. And all that's painted manually. Now back in the day you would probably have to do this all in Photoshop, and I actually do remember those days. But in this case there's another program called Substance Painter, and you would do it through there. So if you notice, like, you got the eye, you got the tongue, and again I'm just giving you a preview because I'm getting pretty much close to finishing up on this stuff for tonight. Maybe I might work on it a little bit more. However, whatever it is, it's just kind of minor. But let's see. Substance. Yeah, no, I know. There's things that look like things you wouldn't have expected at first thought. But let's see here. Yeah, there's I forgot who was showing me. They were working on a sea creature, like something between it was like a cuttlefish, some kind of other crustacean. I couldn't remember. It was just like a combination of stuff, and the squid. When looking at the texture maps, man, there were some things, man. There were some things. I think it was this one. Okay, no problem. I was like, again, this is all like a little bit of a rundown with what I'll be doing with the crown, and then the lady, and then the thing that's draped over her head, like that hood stuff. Because it's a process. If it was just a sculpting thing, if I wanted to, like, let's say just print the thing out into like a 3D figure, which is stuff that I actually want to get into. I found out that you could actually do it with these low poly meshes. I saw somebody from EA that actually had their work printed out because they just loved his work so much, and he wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. And they can print with color, which is pretty amazing. So essentially what I'm gonna do is take the sculpt here. Let's see this one. Yeah. So also the necklace and all that stuff will be there, which I still have to work on because everything's just kind of like floating there, and that needs to be actually fixed. I'll also have to create hair that will kind of come down. It's like loose strands. It's not gonna have a ton. But essentially, once I'm done with this, I'm going to do the retopology portion, which turns it into that low polygon thing that I was talking about before, which I think you can see. It's on one of these settings. Yeah, to give it this type of flow. And then once that's done, let's see. Once it's done, of basically tracing over the high poly stuff, you go in there and you choose where would be the best place to kind of cut it, where to add seams. Yes, you guys are good. Thanks, Bill. Have a good one, man. It was nice having you around. Yeah, so what ends up happening with this is that in another program, I'll end up cutting it kind of like what I did here. I cut this thing into pieces, and once it's in pieces, like, you would find a seam. So like right here, I believe is one of the seams. I had to cut it around the stem, and there's also, I think, hidden here, I think it might be in this section, I'm not sure, can't remember anymore. There is a seam there, and then there's a cap here, and so I'll be doing that to every single piece that is in my current sculpt. And then once that part is done, that's when the real fun starts, which is actually doing all this stuff, which is painting it. in the case of this, I kind of started from scratch. So I just went, found the color, and this stuff is crazy. This is like Photoshop on a whole nother level, right? The way it works, because whereas Photoshop, you're working on a specific layer that will affect just that one aspect. This thing will actually do a bunch of stuff. So if you look at the tongue over here, right, all this stuff is pretty dynamic. It's non-destructive. So kind of do this. If I turn that off, the tongue will still be there, the colors might still be there, but give it a second to load or unload or whatever, you'll see its base shape is there. If they could figure out how to do this somehow, where I could just like type in somewhere, and not like a layout program, like something else, like just if it were typography, Carrie would be interested if they ever figure this out. It's like, just give me 8 columns. Here's a layer. I need the gutter to be this. I need this, the leading to be that. Just kind of one thing that affects everything, and just kind of go through with it. That would be awesome. It's taking a bit. But you'll see the tongue. It'll change in just a moment. Yeah, I didn't, those teeth, I'm actually very proud of them. It took a while to figure out exactly how I was gonna do these. And the more I look at them now, they could have been done better. Because you see this here? There's like this little shadow. That shouldn't be there. And there's this thing called the baking process, which in that program that I showed you how this thing is all layered up, that's where you would go and actually you layer both the low poly and the high poly, and then you basically bake the information from the high polygon model onto the low one. And all that really means is that it's figuring out how to take that 3-dimensional information and actually transfer it onto an image that's basically a map for the low poly. Yeah, I have a obsession with creatures, Carrie, so teeth like that tend to be common. I have this here, but I think its teeth are a little bit more human-like. It loads up. Yeah, these were more human-like. This was originally an exercise in making a skull, and then it got way out of hand. I had just come from the museum, and I figured I want to do something like that. So I created a skull, an actual human skull, and by the end of it, I was like, yeah, you know what? It's kind of boring. So as Peppa would say, it's low energy. So I decided to sculpt this whole thing coming out of it. And since, like I said, I had just come from the museum, I had seen all their their sculptures from certain Mesoamerican cultures. So I was like, I kind of wanted to do something like that, but just a little, obviously very different. These aren't so bad. Yeah, no, these teeth are pretty good. Again, this was an actual human skull before I decided to turn it into something completely different. I was gonna do a whole series of this, like if there happens to be like some kind of a civilization or something that existed beforehand and they had just found these. And so this was one of them. And I was working on like an animal one. And that one's still a work in progress. Let's see. Yeah, that's fine. I'll update it. I'm actually very proud of this one that I'll show in a second, because it's actually a letter opener that, yes, yeah, that's a little bit of the inspiration. I think it wasn't like immediately obvious to me at first. So I had, you know, you build up these visual libraries, and you don't always notice that you're copying certain ideas until like later. Yes, this was actually one of the people that I work with. His father, well, his whole family is Italian, and some of them were in the mob actually, which is kind of interesting here in New Jersey. And one of the cool things about the stuff that he would show me is like he had this letter opener from Italy from like the late 1800s that one of his I think it was his great grandfather or his grandfather brought over. And so I decided to recreate it. I mean, you know, give it an extra detail, because the part that he had was just like so worn out. They had a foundry in Italy, and then they formed another one when they were here in New Jersey, in Newark actually. And so I created the whole thing. I added this whole date, you know, which is of significance to him. And so I just recreated it with extra detail, which I thought was really cool. So like let's say this here is one texture set. So this is actually what the blade really does look like in real life. I tried to spend as much time to really capture it. I figured that, I mean, I've known this man for like so long, and he's like 70 something years old, and for the stories that he tells me, I just felt I had to do it justice. So I could have made it perfect, but I'm like, I gotta give it that that old look. Thank you guys. Yeah, all I know is that when he saw it, he was really happy. I was actually proud of this because this part was very worn out, so I kind of had to, luckily I had worked on a line before, so all I did was just basically squish it and add it to the end, and it, for some weird reason, it really just kind of fit with the exact design that was in the real blade and the real letter opener. So this is actually one of the pieces I'm the most proud of. I also made a lock from him, because they used to do the locks for the railroads. And it's funny watching, you know, I keep bringing up Peppo, like the stuff when he's playing Red Dead. There's some stuff that I see there, and I just think about the stuff that the guy used to tell me about how they used to work with the railroad. So yeah, the lock. I don't think I actually showed you the full one on that. Experiments getting up. Yes, I did it once, except I didn't do it with the Connect. I did it with there's a program where you actually you take photos, just regular photos with any camera. You could take as many angles as you want, and it uses AI to actually figure out what the 3D form should be. And I did play around with something like that. I did want to use the Connect for something like that, and I've been meaning to get into it. I have a Connect over here somewhere put away, so I would definitely want to try that again for sure. I think it's actually pretty cool. So this is another thing that his family did, so I made sure to add all that stuff, and you can kind of see it here. I made it look just like it did on the reference photos that I took. Made it look all dusty. Yeah, man, that stuff is mind blowing for sure. And now that I'm doing this stuff, I think it could be really cool. For example, like let's say scanning someone's head, or maybe a figure or something, and then being able to work off of that as a base for something. I think that would be awesome. So, um, yeah, I definitely got to get back into using it. I have it there, and you know, it's just taking up space at the moment. Yeah, especially with the guy that I learned watching do all this 3D stuff. Um, he does likenesses. I you'd be blown away, blown away. Uh, he's on another level, and everything he does is he just has a base mesh, and he just works off of that. So everything is just based off of reference photos, nothing scanned. For him, it's all about developing his eye. But if to be able to use both of those things in conjunctions, even as a way to like study, scanning someone's head, and then let's say being able to rotate it, draw what you see on the screen, or sculpt something of a likeness based on that, that would be awesome. And that's actually a good thing you reminded me of, because it kind of gone to the back burner. Let's see. There is this one. But yeah, it would definitely be a good tool to use. I just got to see how what software I would have to download so I could just hook it up to this thing. Start. And speaking about the statues and Mesoamerican stuff, this is one that I did for a contest. This is actually the first piece where I really learned how to do any of this stuff. I probably went way too much on the detail in terms of the mesh itself. However, um, I learned a hell of a lot doing it. So this could have really been simplified by a ton. Probably didn't need all these crevices here, all these little folds and all that. Especially for some of this stuff here, it's very high poly. But technically speaking, this was for, I can't move this bracket. Navigation on this is a little weird sometimes. Yeah, I figured I'd do something. There was a contest that was being held, or a little competition. It was on ancient cultures, so I decided to do something kind of like Mayan inspired a bit. So I just had like a bunch of photos from the museum, and I decided, screw it, I'm just gonna do something like this. Maybe a little bit more higher detailed than what would be in real life, but I felt it worked. But yeah, this texture could be done in that other program that I showed that does the progressive rendering. But this is real time. All this is painted, right? So this definitely gives it a different feel. So I could actually just go in here and like, let's say, let's see if we go materials. And this is the cool thing about doing this type of stuff. Like I love 2D. I did a lot of concept art, and there's a whole thing with that. But the fact that you could just rotate something, and it's like, oh, you don't like that material? Cool. We're gonna do copper. Let's do that. And you would just do something like this, and you'll see this thing update. Did I win? The way I kind of, I mean, there was no real prizes other than your the guy that was holding it was the somebody who worked for EA. And so with him, he was basically it was more of a learning experience because he was learning some stuff too. But we all kind of voted. I think I got I might have gotten like the top amount of votes. I honestly can't remember at the moment. But yeah, the cool thing about this is once you figure out how to make a certain material, you could always use it again. So I could use this as a base. So if I ever do like another statue that's supposed to look kind of like stony or whatever, I could use this again, and it'll work just fine. This actually is Substance. It's Substance Painter. Now this one I got off of Steam, Carrie, but it's the same thing. The only thing that's really different is that with this one, it's the 2019 version instead of the, I think it's 2021 now. And I can't download materials from them. But technically speaking, with what I've learned from the other program, Keyshot, I can create almost any material here. It's just a matter of knowing how to use curvatures. It's literally Photoshop in 3D, which is really, really cool. So you end up using like curves a lot, and like color selections. Yeah, I'm pretty sure not has. I mean, it's very incremental. I know that when every once in a while this one will update, and I haven't seen much of a difference between the one before it. So I'm pretty sure whatever is new. I mean, it's Adobe, so you're gonna have a lot of stuff that's gonna be pretty much the same. The stuff that I think that they updated is stuff that I wouldn't use for workflow reasons. It doesn't make sense for game art, which is essentially what this is. So and if you're doing stuff for like movies, you wouldn't really be using some of the features that they're using, maybe for certain things, but for movies or anything with like cinematics, they use a program called Mari, and that's because the geometry is different. You wouldn't have the low poly, you'd have like high poly stuff. So there is that. I think they're just trying to like cater to as many people as possible, so they've added a bunch of functions that probably aren't relevant to most people, and the people that it would be relevant to probably wouldn't be using some of those features in this particular program, because once you get to a certain point, Substance crashes way too much. I'm surprised it hasn't crashed the stream yet, to be honest. I mean, I know this isn't like high polygon stuff, so I mean, it moves pretty quick. But the moment that you drag in something that's a little bit more detailed, it would definitely crash the stream. The guy that I was showing Isabel last time, Georgian, this stuff, like what he's been working on, it crashed the stream like 2 or 3 times today. He just had to stop. It's very frustrating. I know it happens to me where like from time to time, once you get into like these more well, this isn't so much a complex material, but once you get into something that has different materials, it really gets to a point where you really just want to rage quit. Let's see. Yeah, some of these kind of suck, which is why somebody would want to download some other ones. Yeah, like this is terrible. But working off some of the stuff here, you could probably come up with something good. I mean, I don't think the one that I ended up with was perfect. The lighting here is not great, but once it's actually in Marmoset, which I hear there's going to be a new version soon. Let's see. Which one here? Extension. Might have been this one. Yeah. Next, so you're saying it's more from beginning. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it really depends on what you're doing. For creating materials or getting a base going, it's perfect, because then once you export these maps that kind of like what I showed with the pumpkin, those things can then if you're really going into the nitty gritty of it, you could just go into Photoshop and then mess with it there. And then with a program like this, you just kind of set your scene up. And this is more for if you're just gonna display something in your portfolio. I do want to get into Unreal some point next year. So that's the goal. And one thing that would be pretty cool, and this is the idea, this is part of the thing, just again, it's funny how one thing connects to another even though they seem irrelevant. Watching Peppo do his 2D work made me think about how I wanted to go back and mix it up, because I'd been so focused the last 3 years on 3D. And so if I get something like this printed, granted it would have to be in pieces, right, so that it's easy to put together. Some of these things, trying to 3D print it would be a little bit hard because of the spacing, but in pieces it can be done rather quickly, and then you would just assemble them. So you would need like a to design where these things would connect, but essentially an idea that I have would be to basically get one of these things molded, and then once it's done, you know, after it's casted, you mold it, make a couple of these, and then for like Comic-Con, sell them. But aside from just getting the figure itself, you would get something that was painted to go along with it. So then I would, you know, go and make the art for it. So if I did the concept art beforehand, I could sell it like a poster to go along with this, or some kind of like mini print, you know, something like 11 by 17, something like that, you know, tabloid size. Or if not, if I haven't come up with a thing and I'm just kind of, you know, winging it like what I'm doing with the current piece, you know, I could then take it, zoom in, maybe put it at a weird angle, and then, you know, desaturate it and just get kind of like basic line art off of it, and then just paint over it. Just kind of like do packaging design, something similar to like, I guess what Bill does. So you just imagine having this thing where you could buy it, maybe not this one, or maybe this one, maybe the pumpkin, or that other alien bust, and I know a couple people that can paint it, and then have that done, get the print, and, you know, it doesn't have to be too big, but you can get a lot of detail in some of these prints depending on the printing method. So that's the plan. That's the plan. Oh, you like this one, Isabella? It's actually one of my favorites, just because of the fact that I don't do stuff like this often. Usually what I'll do is like, whenever I've been tasked to do anything, it's been a bit kind of it's been more like sci-fi. It's been more like monsters and creatures. I mean, like I said, with that thing that I had to do, my first job was doing something for the 25th some anniversary of the Aliens franchise. So actually, over a 3-day weekend, using some ideas that they had. Nice, thank you. Basically I had to come up with the presentation for creating like 4 mini busts that with basically the variant of each alien in the Aliens movie. So you have the alien from the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one, and all those iconic designs kind of like were kind of pizzaed together, and then you'd kind of have like this like the DVDs or Blu-rays underneath. It was kind of interesting, and I never knew what ended up happening to them. And then years ago, I happened to be going by Midtown Comics in the city, And sure enough, there it was. I saw the package and it just kind of went nuts. I had to get it. Um, so it kind of started off with that. I've done stuff where it was just concepting, but I really enjoyed the 3D stuff because it's a different. Like I've always like detailing, right? Now this, because of the nature of what it is, if it were stone and if it was weathered, most of that detail would be gone. But if I was to, like, let's say, recreate this now and make it look pristine, oh, I'd go nuts with it. I'd still have like some of these cracks to give it like, oh, maybe it was damaged, but all this stuff here, these little medallion like things, and all these other little patterns, there'd be like all these different types of striations and cuts and bevels that would really kind of even sell it more. But again, it wouldn't look ancient at that point. It would be newer. It's like all considerations when doing concept art. But yeah, like I said, most of the stuff that I've done has been like within that monster creature sci-fi type thing. So this is definitely one of my favorites, along with the letter opener, just because it's much different than anything else. So I've kind of like enjoyed doing these little things rather than some of the freelance work that I've done, just because it's that much different. I mean, I don't think anybody would ever ask me to do this. This was only just because of the competition, just because people within because the guy who held the competition, he worked for EA, and he was just learning some stuff. He hadn't really used ZBrush, and so he wanted to get some topics, and it just so happened to be in this case that it was like ancient civilizations. So he did like this dagger. It's like a jade dagger. No, it was a dagger for sure, but it was like ivory. And actually, let me see if I could find it. I thought it turned out it turned out really good, and it's one of my favorite pieces that he did. Let's see. Burnt. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so he left EA, but this guy does like amazing work. All right, so it's actually this one right here. So I did that one. He did this one. And maybe it doesn't look 100% realistic because this is supposed to have some type of translucency, technically speaking. Um, it still looks really good. I definitely like the sculpt. He had like 7 different blades that he sculpted for this because everyone kept giving him suggestions, which is why you try not to uh, have that backseat arting, if you will. Yeah, and that's just some quick turnarounds. Yeah, so if it was for that. Um, but yeah, it's so much more different than the stuff that I would normally do. That's probably, maybe it's not my favorite, but it's definitely among there. But it was definitely my favorite project to work on. Um, it definitely taught me patience for sure. Close this now. Yeah, and actually now that we're getting towards wow, the year's going by so fast. Let's see if it's this one. There was something that I was working on in anticipation for the Christmas time this year, and then I just kind of just left it. Let's see. This one. I never finished it. But I was working on a Christmas tree. I was gonna do like a bunch of decorations. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but this thing is taking a bit to load. Depending on the angle. Like I have this whole thing lit up. Like I'd have to find a better way to do this. So that it moves a little bit faster. But I like that it actually does look like a tree. Or a bush or something. Obviously the trunk was never really worked on. But I was working on like the decorations. That was the thing that I really wanted to do. So let's see. Decoration, I think it was this one. Yeah, this is actually one of the ones that I'm very proud of. I got to see how I can optimize that. I made all these little snowballs. I mean, not snowballs. I made this the star thing. It actually looks like something out of Destiny now that I'm looking at it. But yeah, I modeled this thing. Very simple. Just wanted like a decoration. But sometimes this is the type of stuff that you'll be asked to do, right? I think it looks like snow, or at least like it's been frosted. So I think I did a good job there. So I did all of these. Basically, this was more to test out how to create the materials. So like even this here, you zoom in and I move the light, you'll see that there's like a bit of a sheen. It's that golden material. And again, that's for all of them. So I would go copy and then just create a new material in Substance for this stuff. And yeah, again, I think I'm actually proud of the fact that it looks like maybe these are a bit frosted over. Give it a little bit of that wet look to it. So my plan was make a bunch of these, right? And then decorate the tree with some of this stuff, make the lights. And these actually, I don't think they look terrible. They look pretty decent, I think. Like, maybe I'd fix this. They almost don't match up in terms of style. I'd probably have to definitely work on that. But if I do, maybe I'd sell them on ArtStation as like some kind of pack. So if you were working on something and you just wanted something to kind of decorate a scene, you could maybe use these. Yeah, very shiny. Yeah, just because, I mean, especially from far away, you don't get some of that. So I made some that were more matted, some that were more shiny. And depending on the lighting, I mean, you're not, if there's a scene that's like over there, you're not really going to be able to tell any of that. But over here, and if you had to do like a close-up shot, something like maybe in a, like technically you could come up with something that looks like, what do you call it? If this were in a tree and you had like another decoration, maybe you had like a Christmas card, right? Which actually might not be a bad idea for this Christmas. Let's see. You can just come over here, focus, the field. If you add depth of field, then it kind of starts to make it look even more real. The shirt kind of looks great to the shirt. Of course you'd be thinking that it's a weapon. But yeah, that was the idea. It's kind of make some stuff here. And like I said, I don't think it turned out bad, so should continue to work on it. Like I said, make the lights, make the tinsel stuff, things that would go on the tree. I gotta optimize that tree. I still gotta figure that one out. Gotta look at some tutorials or something. But I think it's a good start. Yeah, no, this stuff is addicting. Because from, let's see, is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, this is something that I was working on, like all this stuff here, like this glass. Like I was gonna do this thing where it's kind of like a museum, and you'd have like all these weird skulls and statues and stuff, and then the bases would all be different. So I have like a whole mess of different bases, all these materials for different stuff. Some of them would be under glass, if you can kind of see. And this is what I like about the 2D stuff being transferred over to this 3D stuff. If I move it at just the right angle, the light hits it in a way where you can kind of see like the edges are a little bit scuffed up and dirty. I want to add like maybe a couple fingerprints, stuff like that. Have something that actually hold this in place instead of it just floating there. All these little stands. So if done correctly, I might actually be able to pull it off. So let's see. So there's that. Go back to here. So yeah, that'll be what I'll be doing with this. What I'll do, I'm thinking, is as I finish each asset, I'll just kind of post that on ArtStation. So there'll be this, there'll be the crown, there'll be the necklace, the hood and the lady will go together in its own thing. Once everything is hooked up, I'll just kind of place all the stuff there. I gotta make actual earrings for her. She doesn't have any. You gotta do hair. I am actually kind of proud of the texture on her face. I gotta do the actual eyes. I haven't done eyes. But yeah, she actually needs pores. Right now it's just kind of like really basic stuff. It definitely needs something else. This, of course, would need more work. It's a little too play-doughy. So I think that I might have a solution for that. Like all these little wrinkles. So I'll be painting all of her skin, all the eyes, this hood stuff, the crown. I'll have to detail the little strands for this. So figure out how all this stuff ties into each other, make the little holes for the beads, paint the claws. Now this stuff that I have for the little tiny skull might actually be so bad. It looks like a decent start, so I might be able to use that. Let's see here. Oh, I have this thing. And I'll be making that look almost like a coin or something. And so I have to actually add the little holder. Yeah, I have like a, I don't know if you guys have, Carrie, if you've heard of PureRef. I use this now instead of Photoshop. It's probably the best thing I could have found. Let's see. So there's just some stuff, some of the references that I have for what I want to do. So this is where I had it last time that I streamed. Here's where I was looking at some of the folds. The cool thing about this program is that if you click on a picture, for example, and then let's see, rotate it and crop it, there's a way in which you can change the direction. For some reason it's not doing it right now. Come on. Well, there's a way anyway to to like flip the images and all that. Ah, there we go. It's a very quick way to look at reference. So some of the stuff, so that necklace came from this idea. I saw this, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I think I got pretty close to what I wanted to, like this reference. And I've just been looking at all this stuff here. Some of this, I like the shapes, some of the texture. This would be very interesting at some point to create something like this. Maybe something like that too, with like the feathers. Yeah, and then it just had a bunch of faces. I'm just at different degrees of stuff like this one. What the hell is this? How can she see? Some of these are crazy, man. But yeah, PureRef. This is the best program for you're working on your art in terms of putting on compiling reference images. And the cool thing about it is that you can just label everything too. There's that. That's you keep saying that. Now I'm very curious how this person looks like. Yeah. Oh, so one of the things is I actually changed the shape of the crown from the original time, so it's actually more it conforms to her head a little bit better, and that's also why I added these things here. One, it gives it more of a the visual weight of it. It just, even though it's just like these small lines, I think it holds it better instead of just having it so front heavy. Also, I'll be adding the wrinkles and the folds here, because one thing that I'll be doing is I'll actually move the ears a little bit back because of the weight of the cloth and the crown, and because this will be pressing on top of her head, it'll actually have to do, it'll have an effect on the folds here, so it'll look like there's actual weight to it instead of just floating there. So yeah, this is where I'll leave it. I'll leave it here for today. I think the crown, compared to where it was when I started the stream, I actually did quite a bit. You know, simplified it. Definitely turned out better. So there's really not that much. Just cleaning up the edges, making sure it's straight, and then once that's done, I'll go in there and start beating up the hell out of it, just abusing it so that it looks worn. So, thank you guys for being here, the company, me telling my origin story, and finding out that you guys weren't gifted and talented too. That was kind of interesting. So, I'll catch you hopefully tomorrow. And thank you again for being here. Thank you, Isabella.